You know, it's funny. Sometimes the most incredible stories are hiding in the most unassuming places. Today, we're diving into a 75-year-old scientific paper to uncover this forgotten story about war, survival, and a secret superfood you've probably never heard of. Okay, so here it is. This is our source material for today. It's Bulletin number 484, published way back in January 1947. And yeah, I know, it looks pretty dry, right? Brewer's yeast and human and livestock nutrition. But trust me, hiding inside these pages is an absolutely incredible story of how a simple byproduct of making beer became this critical resource for nations at war. And that's really the question we're asking, right? What if the key to feeding an entire nation during a crisis wasn't some fancy new technology, but something that was literally being thrown away every single day at the local brewery? It sounds totally wild, but believe it or not, that's exactly what happened. So where does this story even begin? Well, like a lot of incredible innovations, it starts with a massive global crisis. We're talking about the desperate, urgent need for food during wartime. This timeline really sets the stage. When World War I kicks off in 1914, it almost immediately creates these huge food shortages. And by 1915, you've got both German and English scientists scrambling, looking into yeast as a potential high-protein food. Then boom, World War II hits in 1939, and that research just kicks into overdrive. This wasn't some casual scientific project, no. This was a desperate search for answers. So you might be asking, why was this so urgent? Well, here's the thing. Our source material points out, during World War I, the Allied blockade completely cut Germany off from its usual supply of high-protein animal feed. The country was literally starving. And that's what turned the study of yeast from just a scientific curiosity into a matter of national survival. Okay, so if these countries were desperate for a new food source, where on earth did they find one? The answer, it turns out, was hiding in plain sight, in something that everyone thought was just industrial waste. And that brings us to our unsung hero, brewer's yeast. It's the little microorganism that does all the hard work of fermenting beer. But after its job is done, it's just this sludgy residue left behind. For decades, breweries just looked at this stuff as junk that they had to get rid of. But how much junk are we talking about here? A truly staggering amount. The Bulletin estimated that back in 1947, the U.S. brewing industry alone could churn out 30 million pounds of this dried yeast every single year. I mean, that is just a huge untapped resource sitting right there. And to put that into perspective, you have to hear this incredible quote from a scientist named Charles Frey all the way back in 1930. He figured out that some yeast plants could produce the protein equivalent of 500 steers every single day. 500! All of a sudden, that waste starts to look a whole lot like a nutritional gold mine, doesn't it? So we know it was abundant, but what was in it that made it so valuable? Okay, let's dig into the science because this is where the story gets even crazier. Just look at this chart based on the data in the bulletin. The first thing that jumps out is the protein, 46%. That's a huge number, and it's what got scientists excited in the first place. But believe it or not, that wasn't even the most important discovery. See, the way scientists thought about this stuff really changed over time. At first, all the research was focused on protein, but then they made a discovery that was a total game changer. They found out yeast was an unbelievable source of what they called accessory food substances, which we now know as the B-complex vitamins. And when I say powerhouse, I really mean it. The bulletin just lists them off: thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and on and on. And these weren't just for, general wellness. No. These were the keys to preventing and even curing some of the most awful deficiency diseases of the time. Take pellagra, for example. This was a truly horrific disease that was running rampant in the early 20th century, and it was all because of a simple lack of niacin, or vitamin B3. So finding a cheap, plentiful food source that was jam-packed with niacin, that wasn't just a nutritional win, it was a public health miracle in the making. All right, so once they had this knowledge, yeast started moving out of the lab and into the real world. It began being used to boost the diets of both animals and people. And what's so cool about this slide is you can see just how specific and practical this all became. This table shows the official recommendations for adding dried yeast to chicken feed by mixing in just a tiny amount, like 2.5%, to the food for young chicks. Farmers could give their flocks a huge health boost, which made food production way more efficient, especially during the war. But this was never just about animals. This page right from the bulletin shows how they used yeast to treat humans. I mean, get this. One study showed that a daily dose of just 30 grams of dried brewer's yeast could completely cure a patient with experimental pellagra. It was literally being prescribed like a medicine. And this is the part that just blows my mind. This became actual public policy. It's astonishing, really. As early as 1929, way before you could just go buy multivitamins, states in the American South that had high rates of pellagra were running these huge statewide programs to hand out yeast to their citizens as a public health measure. So this begs a pretty obvious question, right? If brewer's yeast was this incredible superfood, why on earth haven't most of us heard this story? What happened to it? Well, there was one big hurdle: the taste. Raw brewer's yeast has this, and I'm quoting the bulletin here, highly unpalatable, bitter flavor from the hops used in brewing. So first, they had to figure out a way to wash that bitterness out. Then the food scientists got really creative, coming up with recipes that mixed the yeast into things like ground meat, gravies, and even peanut butter, all just to hide the flavor. And you can really feel the immense hope that researchers had for this stuff. This quote from 1945 just captures that optimism perfectly. They really, truly believed this simple byproduct could improve the health of countless people throughout the world. They thought it could change everything. And that leaves us with one last big thought. This whole story is about finding profound value in something that was just being thrown away. It's such a powerful lesson in being resourceful. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? As we face our own challenges today, what are we overlooking? What potential superfoods are hiding in plain sight for us right now?